Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Sickle Cell Action Network, a weekly internet radio show presented by Martin Center Sickle Cell Initiative and sponsored by Mass Therapeutics. We're coming to you live from Indianapolis, Indiana, and we're here to serve you by providing up-to-date information and opinion on all matters pertaining to sickle cell disease. My name is Gary A. Gibson, and I am your host for the next 2 hours. Let me start by saying that I don't have sickle cell disease, nor do I carry the sickle cell trait. In spite of that, I am no stranger to sickle cell. Quite the contrary. You see, even though I don't have sickle cell, it has had a very huge impact on my life. That's true because its complications took my wife from me after 12 years of marriage. It also caused her to have a miscarriage that resulted in the loss of our twin babies that she was carrying while in a sickle cell crisis. So all told, sickle cell has taken 3 lives from me, and I feel the pain of those losses every single day. I currently serve as the President and CEO of Martin Center Sickle Cell Initiative, a community-based organization that has been serving people with sickle cell for over 45 years. Each day I attempt to transform the pain of my losses into positive energy that is focused on making a difference for those who are battling sickle cell. From being involved with sickle cell for over 40 years, I'm able to say that much progress has been made, but there is still so much work to do. The show is an opportunity to contribute to the ever-expanding dialogue about sickle cell that is taking place all around the world. Our show is about raising awareness, but it is also about so much more. I like to say that sickle cell awareness is important, but we need more than awareness. Those living with sickle cell are already aware. That makes me ask, so what are we doing for them? My answer is, not enough. That's why we've named this show the Sickle Cell Action Network, because awareness without action has very little impact. We want this show to be a source of information and a call to action to help those who must live with sickle cell in their midst. We have designed the show to provide information that is beneficial to patients, caregivers, family members, and friends alike. Most importantly, we want people with sickle cell to know and understand that they are not alone. The Sickle Cell Action Network show features live guests who are healthcare providers, patients, advocates, and others who are engaged in the fight to eradicate sickle cell and ease its burden on those it affects. Today, we're honored to have a very special guest in studio to talk to us about beating sickle cell. The title today is Fighting Sickle Cell on 2 Fronts. Joining me in studio is Jacquie Robinson. She not only has a daughter with sickle cell disease, she also runs a community-based organization that provides sickle cell education and awareness. We're honored and thrilled to have Jacquie with us today. Before we get to today's topic, however, I want to share some of the upcoming topics with you so that you'll know what we're going to be up to in future weeks. We will cover such topics as the global state of sickle cell research updates, traveling with sickle cell on social media, connecting the sickle cell community, and many, many others. So as you can see, we are very serious about sharing valuable information, and we hope that you will join us every week, same time, same station. If you've missed some of our previous editions or wish that you could listen to them again, don't worry. Just go to the Martin Center Sickle Cell Initiative YouTube page and you'll find them there. Now let's get on with our show, and we'll start with this week's edition of Sickle Cell News Update. Our first story today is titled University of Illinois Health Physician Helps Treat Sickle Cell Disease in Nigeria. A University of Illinois Chicago physician is helping establish a bone marrow transplant center in Nigeria to treat sickle cell disease. The need there is far greater than in any other country, says Damiano Rondelli, director of the UI Health Blood and Bone Marrow Transplant Program. Nigeria has as many as 150,000 sickle cell births a year, more than in any other of the 10 countries in sub-Saharan Africa that are most affected. The Democratic Republic of Congo, at about 39,750 deaths, is number 2. The total number of babies born with sickle cell in the 10 sub-Saharan nations is more than 242,000 a year, more than 2/3 of the estimated 305,800 births worldwide. About 5 million Nigerians have sickle cell, compared with about 100,000 in the United States. The relevance of treating sickle cell disease in Nigeria is huge, said Rondelli. He's the chief of hematology oncology at University of Illinois Health. He visited Nigeria in late October with Victor Gorduk, director of the UIC Sickle Cell Program. They met with medical personnel, sickle cell patients, and their families. The chief medical director of the University College of Ibadan said that he embraced their enthusiasm and he embraced the vision that they bought and they are willing to support the project as well as helping to find funds. At University of Illinois Health, physicians have cured 12 adult patients of sickle cell disease using stem cell transplantation from healthy tissue-matched siblings. The technique eliminates the need for chemotherapy to prepare the patient to receive the transplanted cells. Good news from the University of Illinois, taking what they've learned to the hotbed of sickle cell in Nigeria. This story comes from the Hindu, which is in India, and the story says, or the headline is, Non-Tribes Too Get Sickle Cell Aid. So India's cabinet recently decided to extend the 2,000 rupees pension amount given to Adivisis affected by sickle cell disease to all non-Adivisis who have been hit by the disease. Adivisi is the term given to the heterogeneous set of ethnic and tribal groups considered to be the aboriginal population of South Asia. Adivisia make up about 8.6% of India's population, or about 104 million people, according to the 2011 census. So now approximately 2,000 non-Adivisis will also be eligible for the pension. Rupal is equivalent to about 15 United States cents. This means that the pension for sickle cell patients is worth about $300. The story is not clear as to whether this is a monthly or annual pension amount. Another story I'd like to share with you, the title is People with Sickle Cell Anemia Asking Black Quebecans to Donate Blood. HEMA Quebec is using Black History Month to encourage more black Quebecans to give blood. Yes, I know, you wondered if there's any black people in Quebec, or if there's any sickle cell in Quebec. Well, yes, there is. Mr. Delano George knows just how important a blood donation from his own community can be. He was diagnosed with sickle cell anemia when he was 3 years old. He's treated through regular blood transfusions, but 5 years ago he needed more help because he developed antibodies to certain donors. It took a while. We searched around the world, 4 major blood banks around the world, said George. HEMA Quebec literally played a huge part in saving my life, literally. While 1,000 donations each day are needed to maintain the province's blood supply, some cultural communities are underrepresented. For certain blood diseases, such as sickle cell anemia, finding matching donors is easier among people of the same ethnic background. Over the past 5 years, HEMA Quebec has seen the number of black donors grow from just a few hundred to more than 4,000. This year, HEMA Quebec is holding a blood drive at the Table Ronde de Moi de Histoire de Noir. I don't do French very well, I'm sorry, even though I took it in high school. That's the same. Because of his needs, Mr. George has organizing a blood drive himself and is calling on people to help keep others alive. Your blood is in you to help, said George. It's in you to help. And that's it for our sickle cell news update. 3 stories from around the world, just to keep you informed and to let you know that sickle cell is all around the world. We're going to take a commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Do you or does someone you know have sickle cell disease? Have you heard about the EPIC study? It's an international research study evaluating an investigational drug aimed at shortening the duration of painful crisis. And with over 50 sites in the U.S., there may be a site near you. To learn more and to find out if the EPIC study is right for you, visit www.theepicstudy.com.
Hi, I'm Gary A. Gibson, your host for the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show. If you are impacted by sickle cell disease in any way, whether you are a patient, a caregiver, or a friend, you need to join me every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I promise that you will find our show to be full of information, perspective, and opinion about all things sickle cell. See you Tuesday right here on RadioNext.tv, the Cool Groove site.
Welcome back to the Sickle Cell Action Network. I am Gary A. Gibson, your host, and I'm really thrilled that today I have a special guest, Miss Jacquie Robinson, who we've known for a while at Martin Center, and an outstanding lady, I think, in many ways. And we're just really grateful that she's here with us today. So, first of all, Jacquie, let me welcome you.
Thank you so much for having me, Gary. I really, really appreciate it.
Great. So we always do this so that those people that are listening get a sense for who they're listening to. And so the first thing we do is usually just ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, like where were you born, how old are you, what you do for a living, those kinds of things.
Okay, awesome. Well, I was born and raised in Dayton, Ohio, not too far from Indianapolis, a couple hours down I-70. I'm not a baby boomer or a millennial, if that tells you anything about my age. That's about it. I'm in human resources where I've done training and development work, organizational development and effectiveness, performance improvement, line HR, and more. Currently, I have a full-time role as an organizational development manager serving at a global company with nearly 40,000 employees worldwide. And I also own a key business process for the company that impacts our workforce performance.
Wow, that's a lot. And
It's a
like
mouthful.
I said, you're an impressive person. You also run an organization that provides newborn screening services, don't you? Would you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So I run an organization called SCACureNetworks Incorporated, and Secure is spelled SCACURE. I've gotten any number of interesting names like Skaker and what's Secure, and so it's Secure, just like it sounds, but spelled differently. And the SCA stands for Sickle Cell Anemia Cure, something that
Right.
we in this space hope for and pray
Right.
for every day and look forward to happening one day. So, and as far as the newborn screening is concerned, in partnership with the State of Indiana Department of Health, through a grant that they provide to the Secure organization, we ensure that parents of newborns and primary care physicians are well informed about the baby's sickle cell presumptive positive results for trait or disease. We reach out to make sure that these parents get confirmation screenings so that they can begin learning what is needed to care for their newborns and educate themselves so that they can become good advocates themselves. We also educate them about the impact of alcohol consumption and smoking, not just on maybe the family and the impact that it has within that family environment, but also if they're planning to conceive more children. And then last year, we served approximately 320 people in the southern region and are poised to do at least 1.5 times that many. And we're a very small organization.
That region that you serve is southwestern Indiana, and
Primarily southwestern, about 24 counties.
Okay,
And we're
okay.
based out of Vanderburgh County, which is in Evansville, Indiana.
right. That's what I was trying to get at. And on top of that, and sort of I think related, you're also a devoted mother of 3 children. One of them has sickle cell disease. You have twin daughters, and one of them has sickle cell disease. How old is she, and what is her hemoglobin type?
So yes, I am a mother of 3, and I'm glad that you asked about, my daughter Ashanti, whom you've met, and all of my
Yes.
children actually, Gary. But I'll share with you that all of my children are impacted by this disease.
Okay.
My oldest, who is a 19-year-old freshman, Brandon Ely.
Freshman in college.
Yes, he's a freshman at Bradley University in
That's great.
Peoria. He has sickle cell trait, and so it's not an unfamiliar thing for us because we've always had to be concerned with him playing soccer all his life about things like hydration, and people don't realize that trait has some significant
Right.
symptoms as well. My 2 daughters, who are 13, they were my Christmas presents. The one is Amari. She has trait as well, and so she's had complications with asthma. And then the one with the disease is Ashanti, and they're my precious babies. And Ashanti has SS, which
Okay.
is considered the most severe
Right.
form of sickle cell
Right.
disease. And certainly it has impacted her quite a bit in her life.
One of the things I think I want to ask you, we've talked about this a little bit in a previous show, is that do you believe, as I do, that we need a whole lot more research on sickle cell trait?
Yes.
Because as it stands right now, most of the time we say that, well, we're really more concerned with the disease because that's the one that has the greatest impacts, it appears, but we don't want it to come across as if there's no impacts to sickle cell trait. But we don't have a whole lot of data to rely on when we talk about that. So I just wondered, would you agree? And you, as a mother of 2 children with sickle cell trait, there are probably things you've noticed and seen.
Exactly. And the thing is, we know more today than we have about sickle cell trait, but as you mentioned in your introduction, not nearly enough about trait as well as disease. And it has some significant impacts. What I am proud to say is that even at Brandon School and some of the other NCAA universities, they have started to require that the athletes
Right.
declare whether or not they have the trait.
Right.
And I told them, as Brandon's mom, I said, yes, he has it. He's been screened. And they said, that's not enough. We need to see documentation.
Uh-huh.
So it's good that they're reinforcing it from that perspective.
Right. Okay, great. We've talked on the show before also about how sickle cell can have widely varied impacts on patients. some people have more crises than others. Some have more medical complications than others, etc. How has sickle cell affected Ashanti, for instance? How many crises does she have a year?
Oh, goodness, Gary.
Does it vary?
So we've actually been very blessed, and I certainly hope this grace continues. We were initially told to expect her first pain crises or symptoms of sickle cell disease at around age 6 to 9 months of age. Ashanti slept as many as 10 hours a night as a newborn, which wasn't so concerning to me, and I don't know that it concerned her doctors, but I think that, it wasn't necessarily attributable to sickle cell. It was well after age 1 that she began to show greater signs of irritability than her usual quiet self. She was a very, very quiet baby. Between ages 3 and 9, we saw approximately 6 hospital stays, averaging a week or more. She had about 7 blood transfusions in that time frame, and at least one time she was actually in isolation because other patients feared that she had some contagious disease. And at 5 years of age, she didn't know what that meant, why she couldn't go out to the play area when she was able to get out of bed. Since age 9, things have been relatively quiet for her, with the exception of severe colds here and there, just the common colds that children typically have. And there have been a few emergency room visits given her intestinal challenges, which is where most of her crises occur, but nothing significant enough to warrant more than an overnight or two in the hospital.
Okay, so she's been fortunate that she hasn't had to spend weeks at a time, as we know some patients have to.
Exactly.
That's great.
I think our story just may be a little bit different.
So, you sort of touched on the fact that she has more problems, I guess you said intestinal or abdominal when she has her issues with crises.
Yes.
Any other complications that you've noticed?
Yes. At age 3, Ashanti had her spleen removed because it was sequestering or holding in her blood and getting bigger. Shortly after she recovered from that surgery, she was hospitalized due to her first battle with pneumonia. We were there for about 15 days.
Okay.
That would have been her longest stay in the hospital. At age 9, she had her tonsils and adenoids, that's that stuff up in your nasal passages, removed because she wasn't able to breathe and rest properly. It wasn't confirmed the sickle cell disease was the culprit for this. Her twin had the same surgery a year prior. However, the condition certainly wasn't a friend of Ashanti's complications with the disease.
Would you say that sickle cell has helped her in any way?
I consider it a blessing. I know it sounds crazy.
I know, because we've talked about this before, and I'm asking this because we're always trying to find some silver linings.
So, yes, there is a silver lining. The silver lining is that she is probably, and I really do respect my daughter, she is probably the most diligent, committed, and driven young person that I've seen. And this was evident at a very early age. I can remember her even telling her then hematologist, Dr. Heine, that she wanted his job. And he says, well, I wish you'd hurry up. And she might have been 2 at the time. And she maintained that stance for about 3 or 4 years. She was very adamant with him. So I think that's the silver lining for her, is that she's very driven, she's extremely focused, and very successful in whatever she does because of it.
Great. We're talking with Jacquie Robinson, parent of a beautiful young lady with sickle cell disease, and also the president of SCACureNetworks in Evansville, Indiana. And we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue our discussion with Jacquie.
Do you or does someone you know have sickle cell disease? Have you heard about the EPIC study? It's an international research study evaluating an investigational drug aimed at shortening the duration of painful crisis. And with over 50 sites in the U.S., there may be a site near you. To learn more and to find out if the EPIC study is right for you, visit www.theepicstudy.com.
Welcome back to the Sickle Cell Action Network. I'm Gary A. Gibson, your host, and with me today is Jacquie Robinson, the president of SCACureNetworks, the mother of a child with sickle cell. Not quite a child anymore. She's into that teenage years now.
Yes, indeed.
And we're talking a little bit about her, Ashanti, and we're going to talk about other things as well. But let's continue on with Ashanti, because she is an amazing young woman. What about her schooling? Has she had a hard time getting through school because of sickle cell, as so many other people do? And if so, please explain why, and if not, why not?
Actually, Ashanti doesn't have, I shouldn't say doesn't, she does have some challenges, not so much with the school work and the educational process as much as she does with some of her, what I'll call minor crises. It wasn't until a couple of years ago with the onset of menstruation that we started to see some new and different challenges with sickle cell. She became more fatigued and irritable than usual.
Mm-hmm.
In the 2014-15 school year, for example, she missed 20 days of school.
Mm-hmm.
More than half of those were attributed to menstruation.
Hmm.
And in the current school year, she's already missed about 7 days of school for that same reason. We did combat this particular issue by tracking dates to be more proactive. So prior to that time, she would increase her iron intake a week ahead of time. She tries to get more rest, begins heat therapy to improve relaxation and more. And I'm proud to say that she always has been and remains a 4.0 or a straight A
Wow,
student.
great.
So she's very committed to her own success no matter the challenges that SED brings her way. And this drive has kept her on top of things, even in her most difficult days of pain.
You know, we don't talk about this very often. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about medical complications with sickle cell with Dr. Rakesh Mehta from the IU Health System. And we talked about priapism in males, but we didn't cover menstruation.
Menstruation in females.
And that's really something, like you said right before we came on, it's kind of taboo, so maybe people don't like to talk about it, but I think there's some good information you just gave there.
Mm-hmm.
Be proactive. So when we're talking about menstruation, we're going to make the body a little bit more susceptible to the effects of anemia that come
Yes.
along with sickle cell anemia, correct?
Absolutely, because there's a great deal of blood loss.
Right. And
Yes.
so with that, what you've done, if you wouldn't mind repeating it again, what you and Ashanti do, that would be helpful, I think, for some of those people listening.
So we actually keep a calendar, and the little pocket calendars cost about $1 in the dollar store or Walgreens, and it's real simple to track what her cycle dates are so that we can anticipate when the next one is going to show up. And then about a week prior, we take some iron supplements.
Okay.
I might, this is really bad because she hates this, I might feed her a little bit more liver
Okay.
because it has iron in it, and we increase.
I would be in trouble. I can't eat liver at all. But go ahead.
I know you have to figure out what works for you and what
Right.
the iron-rich foods are.
Right.
She will eat spinach and spinach salad, so we probably have those a couple times a week where we might
Okay.
only have it once during the week. Otherwise, she gets more rest as much as possible. We continually have the conversation about stress, especially that which is self-imposed.
Right.
And then we start heat therapy. My mom made a little bit of an investment in it's a moist heating pad.
Okay.
It cost about $80, and she bought it online, and it's a pretty sizable heating pad. So what she would do is start to put that so that her body starts to relax more
Okay.
and prepares for things to come. And that seemed to have helped us quite a bit.
That's really good information. So thank you for that. And although it may be a little bit embarrassing for Ashanti,
I'll pay for it later.
well, tell her that she's helping people
Yes,
by
she
sharing
knows
that
that.
information. And I'm
Absolutely.
sure that she'll be happy to know that she's helping people.
Absolutely.
So what you kind of touched on it, but so her greatest challenges are, she's missed school every now and then with some minor crises or whatever. She's not having trouble with the education part of it, but most of the time what the problem is that it's the missed school days
Exactly.
and catching up. So
exactly
is
right.
that the same that she's dealt with then?
Yes, she has dealt with that, and we have a great school team. I'll say network because that's where I function from with Secure is the whole network
Right.
approach. And our network includes her nurse at the school, the principal, her teachers, especially her gym teacher because she's actively
Okay.
involved in that class, herself, and our family, of course. So she has an individual education plan in place.
Good.
That is really important, and what that is simply a document that outlines a plan for Ashanti's care and the provisions that are necessary when she's at school and when she has to miss school. And that's, it's government sanctioned documentation that schools are required to support for our families, and sometimes people don't know that, so it's important that we communicate that and build that awareness. So Ashanti has that plan in place. She also has it for the extracurricular activities in which she participates in. We educate those folks for her color guard, for example, and volleyball and soccer. She's a very active young lady, so it's really important to have those things in place.
And it's really important to be organized like you all are. I think that's something that doesn't happen enough, and hopefully those listening can maybe pick up a tip here.
I
The
certainly hope so.
proactivity is incredibly important. So you said that she wanted to have the doctor's job when she was like 2 years old. What does she want to be now when she grows up?
Well, it's interesting. I would say in the last 3 years, actually, let me back up. About
Okay.
5 years ago, she started saying, we have a friend who's actually a practitioner over at Riley as well, who went to law school and medical school at the same time, if you
Right.
can believe
Wow.
it. Just
Okay.
an amazing accomplishment. And so Ashanti had this bright idea, I think that's what I want to do. Since I can't decide if I want to be a lawyer or a doctor, I'm going to do both. And I said, sweetheart, and I always told her, you can do anything you put your mind to, but recognize what your personal limitations are and recognize what the potential, impact will be to you when you try and do these things. And so she's finally let that go maybe about 3 years ago and decided she's going to Harvard Law School and become
Awesome.
an attorney.
There you go. And she's got the sights set high. Harvard Law School.
And she's working diligently. She accepts nothing less than her best, and she puts forth every effort to get A's, all A's.
This is wonderful. Let's shift the focus back to you now, if we can. What is it like being the mother of a child with sickle cell from your perspective?
It's not a whole lot different than being the mother of my other two, except when a crisis hits.
Okay.
And I would say that's the most significant difference, of course, because you end up being in the hospital or you're back and forth to the doctor. You're trying to manage communications with school care providers and coordinating work, and then you're coordinating schedules of family members you have to be away from. So this has been quite rare for me. And I manage to juggle things as much as I can. So it's really not much different than a child who might have a toothache or a common cold or a tummy ache, etc. And as I mentioned earlier, Ashanti really is the greatest challenge of all because she tries to do so much more and I think overcompensate at times.
That's also kind of a common theme that we see sometimes with people with sickle cell. It's great on one hand because they're fighters. And it's kind of hard to take the fight out of a sickle cell patient. And we actually don't want to
That's
take the
exactly
fight out of a
right.
sickle cell patient. But we also have to find ways for that to be balanced.
Exactly.
I'm thinking right now of a particular person who's actually called into our show a few weeks ago, and I spoke with her on the phone earlier this week. I won't mention her name, but she is involved with the Sickle Cell Community Consortium. And I told her she needs to slow down just a little bit. She is accomplishing a lot. She's pushing herself to the max. And then she, gets kind of knocked down. And maybe if she had slowed down a little bit, she might have avoided that. So we want to be sure that it's balanced. We want you to push. We want you to strive for the best. But we also want you to ensure that you balance that so that you can be around for those that depend on you. It's time for us to take another break, and after the break, we'll come back and continue our discussion with Jacquie Robinson. The Sickle Cell Action Network show is sponsored by Mass Therapeutics, a publicly traded biopharmaceutical company headquartered in San Diego, California. MAST is currently leveraging the molecular adhesion and sealant technology platform derived from over 2 decades of clinical, non-clinical, and manufacturing experience with purified and non-purified pelaxamers. MAST has developed a drug called MST-188 as a candidate for serious or life-threatening diseases with significant unmet needs. Among those needs is the treatment of sickle cell disease. MAST is currently enrolling sickle cell patients in a clinical trial known as EPIC. EPIC stands for Evaluation of Purified Pelaxamer in Crisis. If successful, EPIC could result in the first treatment of its kind to treat sickle cell disease patients while they are in crisis. The EPIC study aims to determine whether MST-188 can shorten the duration of a painful crisis. MST-188 is an investigational drug that has not been approved for commercial sale in any jurisdiction for any use. MST-188 potentially improves oxygen delivery, and it may help keep blood vessels from becoming blocked and more obstructed. It may improve blood flow by stopping cells from grouping together. It may also reduce inflammation and it may restore cell membranes and give damaged cells time to heal. Interested patients should know that EPIC participants will receive their normal pain treatments during crisis and that there is no cost to participate. Interested patients should also know that participating in this study could not only help themselves, but might also help future generations of those yet to be born. If you are interested in learning more about the EPIC study, please visit www.theepicstudy.com. So we're sitting here on a snowy afternoon in Indianapolis, speaking with Jacquie Robinson. And Jacquie, we're having a great conversation. Let's continue it. We've talked a lot about caregivers in some of our past shows, and we're going to keep talking about it because caregivers are vitally important. From your perspective as a caregiver, what is it that keeps you standing in Ashanti's corner?
Most simply put, Gary, she deserves it. I gave birth to her.
Wonderful answer.
I gave birth to her. I'm accountable for her to help her get the best start in life and fulfill that for which she was created. She's a gift to this world, and sickle cell, while not pretty by any stretch of the imagination, is a gift to her, such that it will be the driving force behind her commitment to serve others and to succeed. This all happened for a reason. I strongly believe that. One I never questioned. When I was told that she had the disease at 6 weeks of age, I said, you know what? I didn't say why my daughter or why my child. What I asked was, what is it that you want us to do with this? So, as well as it, being a calling for myself and for her, I'm standing in her corner and standing in the gap for other patients and families just like ours. It's not optional for me. That's why I started Secure.
When we closed the show a few weeks ago, I think I made a comment very similar to what you just said, Jacquie, and it's that there's a reason. And I truly believe that those who have sickle cell disease are equipped for whatever that reason is. And one of the things that I think that reason is to show others just how strong humans can be. I am continually amazed by the strength and the bravery and the other things that I do see when it comes to sickle cell patients. And I am constantly being impressed by their strength. Not just physical strength, but their mental strength and their emotional strength. And I don't think everybody can handle that. So I really do believe that that is a wonderful, wonderful statement that you just made, and I 100% agree with you.
Thank you.
So most parent caregivers have to balance the demands of their job, and you have a demanding job, against the demands of sickle cell. Have you experienced any problems with the employers that you've had because of the time that you've had to lose from work? If so, please explain those problems and tell us how they affected you and maybe even what you did about it.
Because this is a calling for me, Gary, I believe that the potential barriers to me being able to care for my daughter have been minimized or otherwise removed altogether. When Ashanti had her spleen removed, as I indicated earlier.
How old was she?
She was 3 years old.
Okay.
Yes. I was labeled by a colleague of my then manager, Andy McGuire, and I mention him because he's a dear friend of mine, and he's very supportive of sickle cell, as a potential poor hire. So this was a colleague of his. It wasn't even my manager. And I had just started working with the company in early December, and about 3 days after I started my first day and completed orientation, Ashanti went into crises, and it was pretty urgent. She had to have her spleen removed. We knew it was coming, but we thought it would be delayed just a bit. So I was away from my job for several weeks caring for her, and this individual who didn't have any children, wasn't married, thought that this family thing really shouldn't get in the way of my work.
Right.
Potentially, since I was a new person at the workplace. Thank goodness she wasn't my boss.
Okay.
My boss at that time was very compassionate about the situation and the circumstances. I had means to actually do some of my work from the hospital, and he made that happen for us. And he understood the situation. And again, he's remained a dear friend of mine all these years. And those things do happen. but it doesn't happen everywhere. So at my current employer, we are a very strong organization, very strong in corporate responsibility, very supportive of our employees, a very employee and family friendly organization. We work very hard, but certainly the organization supports it. So I have the flexibility I need to care for her should a crisis arise.
I'm sensing the same pattern here, that there was some proactivity involved, that ahead of time you told your employer these are the circumstances and these are the things that might happen.
Absolutely. And so you'll see that's a common theme with me, is proactive.
Right.
I think we get into bad situations a lot of times because we didn't plan ahead, or we were just not thinking about the potential outcomes of whatever was coming for us. And so with sickle cell, it's a very prevalent part of my world. I can't deny it. I won't deny it. It's something that I live and breathe every day. So with my employer, even my current employer, during my interview with my manager, and I've had several managers since that time, so we go through this orientation process quite frequently if I change a role or if my manager changes. And I let them know, here's my life. And I'm very forthright in that. I kind of wear my heart on my sleeves. What you see is what you get, and I put everything out there. So, I let them know, here's the life that I have. Sometimes these things may happen. We've just been very fortunate that we haven't had many circumstances where Ashanti's been hospitalized for a significant amount of time.
Okay. A few weeks ago on our show, we talked about transitioning to adult sickle cell care. Our guest at the time, Riley Hospital's Dr. Monica Caruana, she gave us some pointers of some things that we ought to be doing. And according to what she said, Ashanti is at the age where the transitioning process should be getting started. Have you started the process yet with Ashanti?
This is really an interesting question, and I'm glad you brought it up, because the proactive nature of our healthcare providers today is a testament to the advancements in awareness and advocacy. Last year, prior to Ashanti's 13th birthday, she received a nice little letter from IHTC, or the Indiana Hemophilia and Thrombosis Clinic, that because she was soon turning 14, we needed to think about transitioning her to adult care, or transitioning to her for, a different doctor.
Those people at IHTC are on the ball.
So I laughed, because although the letter was about a year early, because Ashanti didn't turn 13 until Christmas Day, so we were a whole year early, I was quite amazed. And the shorter answer is yes, we have started that. We're creating a timeline that I keep in my calendar of key actions and decisions, not just looking at the transition to adult care, but also as we plan for high school and also plan for college.
Okay. At Martin Center Sickle Cell Initiative, we're embarking on a brand new project that we call Emergency Department Sickle Cell Education Project. We're doing this because we're tired of hearing about the lack of knowledge and cultural insensitivity of emergency department staff. Have you and Ashanti ever had bad experiences in the ER? If so, would you please tell us about that?
So I've heard so many horror stories
Absolutely.
from others, and we certainly have had at least one of our own that I can recall. Yes, it's been virtually non-existent for us, but early on, I realized the need to be a very strong advocate for Ashanti, and that was because we had a great hematologist who prepared us for some of the things that might come. We were told that when you get to the emergency room, they may just want to kind of sit you in the corner for, to wait for others who arrived ahead of you would have to be served, or that once you got into the point where you needed IV or blood transfusion or anything else, they'd say, oh, if you're in pain, you're just asking for drugs because you're addicted. So there's a number of those stories out there. Our own story, we arrived at the emergency room, and I won't mention the hospital at this time.
Right.
We arrived there, and certainly we were told it would be, about 2 hours. They were running about 2 hours behind. I said to them, my daughter has sickle cell disease. She needs to be seen and triaged immediately because we need to get some fluids in her, need to get an IV started. And I'm telling the staff in the emergency room this. They're clueless. They're administrators. And they're saying, okay, ma'am, we'll be with you. Just have a seat. It'll be just a moment. So I had a seat. I gave them 5 minutes. I went back. I said, she needs to be seen now. Well, ma'am, we have a waiting room full of patients who got here before you. And so I asked for whoever was the supervising doctor to come out. And they said, well, ma'am, I said, I need to see a manager or someone. So not everyone is so confident and so willing to step up and say, I need to
Right.
see someone else who's of an authority to make a different decision because my child needs to be seen.
Right.
So that hasn't occurred again. One of the things that I've learned to do and be more proactive as a result is make sure I make a call ahead to let them know she's coming. Here's what's needed to happen. And then, with the Sickle Cell Advisory Committee, we've worked with
Right.
our IHTC partners to put together the emergency room procedures
Right.
as well.
Right.
So there's a number of things we're doing today to circumvent those issues happening.
But you just gave another really, really good tip. Call ahead and tell them you're coming, and tell them what it is,
Yes.
and tell them to expect you. What we're really concerned with is trying to avoid something known as MSOF, multi-symptom organ failure. And this is something that particularly becomes more important as the patients get older, as sickle cell has done damage to their organs. But at any given point, while someone is sitting and waiting for treatment in an emergency room, their entire body is at risk. And that's something that we want to try to ensure that the providers understand. And we don't think that there is enough understanding about that. So the worst possible thing that can happen is this MSOF event, multi-system organ failure. And believe me, it does kill people. So we want to try to avoid that.
Absolutely.
We're going to take a break. We're having a great discussion with Miss Jacquie Robinson, and when we come back, we'll continue that discussion. Sickle Cell Action Network. I'm Gary A. Gibson, your host. I'm President and CEO of Martin Center Sickle Cell Initiative. Martin Center Sickle Cell Initiative is a 46-year-old community-based organization in Indianapolis, Indiana. We provide services to people that have sickle cell disease, supportive services including a monthly support group, a food pantry and Gatorade program. We also provide transportation assistance to help patients get back and forth to their doctors. We have emergency financial assistance, actually kind of on a limited basis, but we do have it, and we provide that. And other counseling services and social service referrals. In addition to that, we do a lot of education and awareness activities, participating in at least 30 or more health fairs every year, educating thousands of people about sickle cell disease. We also advocate. We beat up on legislators and whoever else we can to try to get the message across that there is more support needed for sickle cell disease. So one of the things that we do is this show, the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show. And we do this show to try to provide education and advocacy for those that have sickle cell. And I'm delighted that with us today is Jacquie Robinson, the president of the SCACureNetworks, a community-based organization in Evansville, Indiana, covering the southern part of the state. And I'm just happy that you're here, Jacquie, and you're providing a lot of good information and tips to people, and hopefully those that are listening have jotted some of this down. We're going to keep talking here, and I'm going to tell you that I remember a time that you and I were having a conversation, and you pulled out this folder, and you said, there's tens of thousands of dollars of medical bills in here. And this is something that we don't talk about enough either, but we on Sickle Cell Action Network have talked about it and will continue to talk about it, because sickle cell is responsible for financial burdens on patients and their families. I've spoken to many patients who, like you, have thousands and thousands of dollars of medical debt. Is that still true for you? And if so, how do you manage it?
That's a really good question, Gary, and thanks for bringing it up. It's something that I don't think we talk enough about. Certainly it is a burden because it brings a lot of not just financial burden, but emotional burden to you because
Right.
you have a lot of sleepless nights.
Right.
So then it results into physical burdens and ultimately can impact just your everyday living and thinking space.
Right.
That folder that I shared with you turned into be folders amidst a crate of files, literally, for each and every provider that had provided services, capturing each and every invoice and amounts. And I found the need to actually better manage or get a handle on those medical obligations resulting from Ashanti sickle cell crises and hospitalizations and visits to the doctors and specialists, only because I was seeing a trend in billing.
Mm-hmm.
I had to stay on top of it. And the only way I could do that was to organize the bills where I could see that, what dates of service were duplicates,
Mm-hmm.
where providers were duplicates, but maybe there was just one small different detail on the bill.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the billing came from someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just small details. But ultimately, I had several bills that were duplicates.
Mm-hmm.
So there are situations like that when you're amidst a massive stack of bills and invoices, and they seem like they're coming in 3 or 4 or 5 a day.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a reality when
Mm-hmm.
you're in the sickle cell space. And I imagine it's the same with some of the other diseases.
Certainly is.
But, it is a challenge still. Yes, I've overcome quite a bit of some of the debt
Good.
just because I work for a great company that has great benefits.
Mm-hmm.
So my debt burden has been reduced
Good.
because of those benefits. If you don't have benefits, though, the best thing you can do for yourself is get organized
Mm-hmm.
so that you know what dates of service happened, what
Mm-hmm.
who the providers were, what the care was.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes there's also charges on there. Ask for itemizations. They don't
Mm-hmm.
want to send you those itemized bills. They'll send you something that gives you a general statement.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes a bill has 5 different providers.
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying to yourself, I think my daughter saw a nurse, one doctor, and maybe the administrator coming in the door, but there's 5 different doctors.
Mm-hmm.
And what they've done is separated out the charges. So you've got a pharmacy charge, an x-ray or radiology charge on there. You've got a charge for the attending doctor, the supervising physician, and the emergency room manager. So there's so many different charges on there that you have to be able to discern what services you had, map
Mm-hmm.
them to what they're billing you, and then fight for a change in those billing statements, and let your insurance company know.
Mm-hmm.
The insurance companies, we have an incredible insurance company. Won't do a free commercial here, but
Okay.
they're amazing.
Okay.
And if you just call and talk to them, they'll spend the time on the phone with you and explain your benefits.
Mm-hmm.
They'll explain how you monitor those charges and how you build that relationship with them. And I think that's what's helped me to manage. And the shorter story around the medical bills, it's not a pretty story by any means. I've had several accounts go to collections, and I can be very open about that because it's a real picture.
It's a reality.
It is very real. And the collection companies will even work with you, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they'll give you, a discount on the outstanding amount. So don't be shy about working with these folks, work with the providers, work with the billing departments. They're people who are used to dealing with somebody who doesn't want to talk to them, who's
Right.
evading their phone calls and,
Right.
pressing the send button so that they don't answer. But if you just talk to them, they will help you as much as they can.
This is one of those areas that actually touches back to our previous topic of transitioning. As the patients get older and get to the point where they're on their own, these are some of the things that they should know.
Yes.
So I'm certain, based on the way our conversation is going and the way you're telling us about your proactivity, that you will have Ashanti prepared when the time comes for this.
Absolutely.
But it's absolutely important that we spend time on that in the transitioning process too, because it can be overwhelming. I personally have not had a whole lot of problems with medical issues. I've had a few. I've gotten a few medical bills, and I know exactly what you're talking about. You look at the bill, and you get a bill from somebody who's like, I never saw him, or I never saw her, but it was somebody on the back that was looking at your lab work or something that billed you. And so it's absolutely critical what you're talking about. But again, the same theme is back again. Proactivity. Be proactive. And I appreciate you for bringing that forward to us. The title of today's show is Fighting Sickle Cell on Two Fronts. And the title was actually built around you, because that's exactly what you're doing. Not only are you the mother of a child with sickle cell disease and 2 children with sickle cell trait, you are also the president of SCACureNetworks, a community-based organization that provides education and information about sickle cell. Would you explain to our audience what SCACureNetworks does?
Yes, I will. So, in addition to the details that I shared earlier in the broadcast, for those of you who are just joining, SCACURE, spelled SCACURE, stands for Sickle Cell Anemia Cure. And that name actually was born out of a project I did when I was working on my first master's program back in, we'll say, a long time ago.
Okay.
And it's something that didn't come to fruition for nearly a decade. And so SCACURE was founded because I felt there to be a need for greater efforts and action on our part for those of us who are integrally infected by the disease, or not infected, affected by the disease, to educate others and increase that awareness and help them learn to advocate for themselves. We've talked a lot about being proactive. I think that's half the battle in a lot of the scenarios you'll hear about the disease and its impact. So SCACURE does a lot of things built on some of the premises from Martin Center, where you're providing educational materials about everything from A to Z when it comes to sickle cell disease. We're really big on building networks of people, including the patient, the caregivers, if the patient is a youth or an infant, including caregivers who might be grandparents who are just babysitting, the babysitters, the teachers and the administrators in the school system, the primary care physicians, the staff at the hospitals and the doctors' facilities, those in the community, such as yourself, the other agencies. There's 3 defined agencies within the state of Indiana, with Martin Center being the larger organization supporting the entire state in a lot of ways, but primarily responsible for the central region, which is the largest region of the state, and then our partners in the northern part of the region. Other organizations like the IHTC, the Indiana Hemophilia Group that I mentioned earlier, and certainly individual hematologists who have contributed a lot in this space. So we do share a lot of information. We help those with the disease understand what resources are available to them, how to reach out to those resources, and how to be a voice for themselves. Some people are shy about speaking up. This is no time to sit down and be quiet. It's no time to take a back seat.
You are right about that.
It is no time to shy away from standing up for what's right and advocating for yourself. Our babies can't do it. We have to teach them by being the example.
Right.
And so that's one of the things that we really reinforce. We also, in serving the 24 southern counties, mostly in the southern part of the region, we also go to health fairs and pass out information. We talk to people, we educate people, we garner support within the communities. We go to schools, we go to churches. If it's a building structure with some people in it who have ears, we're there.
Very well said.
So we serve as advocates, educators, and liaison to engage these networks that I've mentioned. And we really want to just empower those who are affected by sickle cell disease and other hemoglobinopathies. And one of our biggest partners, of course, is the Indiana State Department of Health, who have given us this wonderful gift of a grant to do sickle cell trait education. As you mentioned earlier, it's just not enough of it. And so if you're walking and talking to me, usually you're going to hear sickle cell come out of my mouth in some shape, form, or fashion.
And this is the way it should be with everybody that's listening. We talk about this quite a bit. Awareness is so important.
Yes.
Again, awareness is not all of it, because we still need action
That's
for
right.
those that are dealing with
need
it, because they
soldiers.
are aware. But we
That's
need
right.
people to share information about sickle cell disease anytime that you have the opportunity to do that. Jackie, as you meet and talk to people and try to educate them and make them aware, are you personally sometimes amazed, I guess is a good word. I know you're not going to be surprised, but are you amazed that there's still so little knowledge about sickle cell?
I am.
I am too.
I'm not amazed by any means, but I am, sometimes I'm disappointed.
It's frustrating.
It is, because we have health awareness programs, and there's a lot of health programs that are
Right.
very prevalent in the school systems, in elementary, middle school, high school. These children should be exposed to this.
Right.
Because guess what? They're sitting next to someone who has sickle cell
Right.
disease. Or they're in gym class with someone who has sickle cell trait, and they're wondering, why are they panting like they're about to pass out and die, So teach these children that this is a real disease. It's no different than juvenile diabetes. It's no different than, cancer or anything else that someone has, it deserves as much credence, whether it's in the school systems, whether it's in the churches, wherever it's going to be. We need that, to be bigger in our community.
We sure do. We sure do. In your work with SCACure, you invariably come into contact with not only families with sickle cell trait, but sickle cell disease as well, Jacquie. And what are some of the top issues that you find in that situation?
Well, Gary, there are several top issues, I would say, or several issues that are top of mind, some of which we've touched upon today, including school performance for our children. Because they're sick or because they miss school, their performance in school, their grades fall short of expectations. Sometimes they don't understand, or their parents haven't understood the need to have an IEP in place. Sometimes they're not working with a primary care physician who knows enough to mention that they need to put this in place. And so if they're not connected well with those medical care providers, they're not going to get the education, or if they're not connected with community services and centers like ours, they won't know. The other issue is the administrative support in the school systems. If we as parents and community providers in this space don't take time to educate school administrators, they won't know. They'll remain ignorant to the issues and challenges of sickle cell disease and even trait. So it's really necessary for us to do that, to give our children the best chance at success in school. The parents have challenges with work performance and or job stability when their child is consistently ill or in the hospital. You have some people who don't have the flexibility at work. Their bosses don't understand, or their company policy doesn't promote them being off, doesn't support them being off more than 3 days.
Right.
Well, you know what? A child in crisis who's hospitalized for 15 days, and you have a single parent who doesn't have the support network to be there with that child. Does the parent stay in the hospital with the child and be that voice of the child? Or do they stay on the job so they can provide food on the table and clothes on the back of the child? So, there's always that dual dilemma that some parents may face. Not everybody has an incredible support network.
Right, that's for
My
sure.
husband, Ronald Robinson, is an amazing supporter, both financially, socially. He's actually been to some of the health fairs. And so that lacking support and the lacking network of folks is also another prevalent issue that I see. So if you don't know, if you don't have the network, if you're not an advocate, those things can really come crashing down and make your world seem like it's coming to an end. The other thing that I wanted to just share with you is the high cost of care, as we just mentioned, and the ongoing medical bills. And what we haven't talked about much is the lack of awareness about what sickle cell is and the impacted populations. So many people just still don't know. Now that's amazing to me when somebody says, "Oh, I've kind of heard about sickle cell. What is that?"
Yeah, right. That's the one that always gets me. Or is it still around?
Yes.
As once I heard somebody say,
yes.
"Oh, is it still around?"
Like it was something of the past.
It's still around.
Yes.
And it's still around in a big way. And according to a report from Dr. Frederick Peel, released in 2013, the number of people with sickle cell disease is expected to rise dramatically by the year 2050. So it's not going anywhere. Yes, it's still around, and it's not going anywhere. Another thing that I want to just touch on, though, it sort of spins off of something you said, is that I'm sometimes also frustrated by the lack of knowledge about sickle cell with sickle cell patients themselves. And I'm pretty sure you've probably seen that too. So we really need to ensure that those that do have sickle cell really should try to learn everything you can. Because those things might be able to help you. It might be able to help improve the quality of your life. Knowledge can do that. So we certainly want to encourage that. Go ahead.
And there is a way to help our young children do that. When you're going to the doctor, as early as the time when they can talk, what's important is to let them talk. You teach them, and then you let them demonstrate that they've learned what you've shared with them. When Ashanti was 3 and had her spleen taken out, when we would go for subsequent visits, the primary care physician will ask, okay, has she had any surgeries or any hospitalizations? Right. There's nothing cuter than a 3-year-old saying, yes, I've had a splenectomy. And the doctors get so tickled. And we can laugh about it, but it's important.
It is important.
It is so incredibly important that these children know the medical term as much as they can,
Right.
say it and
Right.
speak it and communicate it. And then they also need to know simply that, yes, I had this organ that it just overfilled with blood, and be able to explain it in a simple manner, because simplicity is what matters when you're trying to explain something to someone so that they get the point.
There's a certain human tendency that I think I've noticed in my time on this planet, is that the more that you know and someone sees that you know more, the better they deal with you. And I'm not talking just about doctors. It's whether it's a lone person or whoever else it is. You see these commercials on TV about the importance of knowing your credit score, because when you go in to apply for a loan for a car or something, if you know what your credit score is, that might help you a little bit with the loan company. And the same is true with the medical field. So it really is important to be able to go into the doctor's office, to go into the emergency room, and be specific and act like you know what's happening. I just can't tell you how important that is. So we're going to take a break, and then when we come back, we'll start wrapping up the show. But thank you for Jacquie Robinson being here and just being so delightful and giving us such great information. This is the Sickle Cell Action Network Internet Radio Show, live.
Do you or does someone you know have sickle cell disease? Have you heard about the EPIC study? It's an international research study evaluating an investigational drug aimed at shortening the duration of painful crisis. And with over 50 sites in the U.S., there may be a site near you. To learn more and to find out if the EPIC study is right for you, visit www.theepicstudy.com.
Welcome back to the Sickle Cell Action Network. I'm Gary Gibson, your host, and I am very happy that we've had a good 2 hours almost with Jacquie Robinson, and great discussion, good tips. Number one tip, be proactive. Number two, plan ahead. Same thing as proactive, but we'll separate it for you. Jacquie, in 2013, you were in a terrible car accident that nearly cost you your life. Yet you've continued to focus on taking care of your family and those you serve. I just want to know, what is it about you that makes you keep giving of yourself after all that you've been through personally?
So, Gary, I think first and foremost, I have to give honor to my mom. Well, first to God, but then to my mom, because Vera Richardson, who's now in Orlando, left me. She has been amazing all of my life, and she taught me at an early age that there's nothing I can't accomplish. And so the car accident, I think, was a wake-up call for me. Even though I had already started Secure, it was a wake-up call for me. And this space of sickle cell that I'm in with you and so many others, it's not an option for me. Nothing happens by accident, not even my car accident. My educational background, my work experience, all those things have cultivated me to be the person that I am today and given me the abilities that I have. I don't have all the answers, but however, my daughter was born to me for a reason. She was born with this dreadful disease for a reason, and I just keep working daily and asking for clarity. I keep moving, I keep serving, and as long as the door is open for me to speak, answer, listen, I do. That's my confirmation that the direction is right. I look at each of my children, I look at my husband, my family, my friends, my co-workers, and the community that I serve, and I see the faces of those who believe in, pray for, and look forward to a cure to this dreadful disease. That, Gary, is what keeps me giving what has been given to me to give to others.
That's very well said. Very well said. So my last question for you today is, imagine that CNN wanted to interview you about sickle cell. Don't we wish that would happen? But let's imagine that CNN wanted to interview you about sickle cell. If they asked you, what are the top 3 things that people should know, what would you say?
Well, that's a good question, Gary, and certainly after being on your show today, I'm sure to get that call. I'm waiting for it.
We hope so.
So, number 3 is sickle cell is not something that defines who you are nor what you're capable to do. Seize every moment and be proactive in sickle cell. Don't let it lead your life, but you lead your life yourself, knowing that it's just a disease that you have, but it is manageable. The second thing will be that sickle cell research to find a cure is more critical than ever. Not tomorrow, not if, but when, and that when should become today. And thirdly, sickle cell impacts many races of people. It's now a multicultural disease. Immigration has made this a reality. It's not just for black people or African Americans.
Okay. And each one of those are very much on point with the message of the Sickle Cell Action Network. Is there anything else that we haven't covered so far that you'd like to add before we close out the show?
No, Gary, I don't want to add anything else. I think that, those listening might be tired of hearing my voice by now, but I am very glad that we are in this space together and working together. It's always a pleasure to work with you. I want to tell you that I appreciate the opportunity to be here and share my story and share my tips. The biggest thing I want to leave you all with is to be proactive. Be proactive. Be your own best advocate, your own best voice.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Jacquie. We appreciate it. You've done a great job as a guest, and I look forward to working with you in the future as we continue to try to make a big difference in this sickle cell space, as you call it. So it's time to close the show, Jacquie, and I always close with a closing statement, and I usually base it off of a quote that really I start with kind of an impulse, and then I look for a quote to try to cover that, and then I use that quote to start what I want to say today. So the quote that I found for today goes like this: "Genius may have its limitations, but stupidity is not thus handicapped." And this was a quote from a gentleman named Elbert Hubbard, who lived from 1856 to 1915. He was an American writer, a publisher, an artist, and a philosopher. He actually was raised in Hudson, Illinois. He's the author of a 9-volume work called Little Journeys to the Homes of the Great. Hubbard and his wife died aboard the RMS Lusitania when it was sunk by a German submarine off the coast of Ireland on May 7, 1915. Sometimes there's no excuse for stupidity, and as Hubbard implies, there seems to be no limit to it either. In recent times, we have learned of different occasions when someone has made a very stupid joke about sickle cell disease. In 2015, the movie Ted 2 included an offensive joke about sickle cell that actually caused a social media uproar and a petition demanding an apology from Universal Studios. Not long before that, comedian Kevin Hart used sickle cell as a source of a joke during a celebrity roast of pop star Justin Bieber. I'm still not sure if the joke or the fact that it came from the lips of an African American man is more insulting. In addition to their offensiveness, these jokes were also ignorant. They were ignorant because their contents were totally inaccurate. They were, in fact, stupid. Some stupid jokes can be funny. In those cases, the humor comes from the jokester's intention to be acting stupid. That wasn't the case with Ted 2, and it wasn't the case with Kevin Hart. They weren't acting stupid. They were being stupid. Now we hear of yet another stupid comment about sickle cell. It is a comment that I'm sure someone will view as a joke. This time, the joke comes from an elected government official, the mayor of a small Kentucky town called Shepherdsville. Shepherdsville is a community of just over 11,000 people. Clearly, those 11,000 people have a mayor who is a racist jerk. The mayor, Scott Ellis, allegedly said, "Black people should be injected with sickle cell so they can't reproduce." Although Kevin Hart and Ted 2 didn't have the sense to steer away from joking about sickle cell, their jokes didn't contain outright malice. Not so with Mayor Ellis. He not only joked about sickle cell, he did so with an overtly racist tone. What an ignorant thing to say. Even if you did inject someone with sickled red blood cells, it wouldn't prevent them from being able to procreate children, and it wouldn't cause the offspring to have sickle cell disease either. Poor Shepherdsville. If I were you all, I'd be thinking about getting a new mayor as soon as possible, because if your mayor actually did say those things, he's as stupid about sickle cell as an ant is about nuclear physics. Let's be clear. There is nothing funny about sickle cell. Where is the humor in the debilitating pain that its patients have to endure? Where is the comedy in the damage that it can do to people's bodies? And for the life of me, I don't understand how anyone can think that it is funny to joke about a condition that robs babies' lives like a sophisticated thief steals money from a bank. Stupid people make jokes about cystic fibrosis, hemophilia, muscular dystrophy, and other conditions too. None of them are funny, and all of them are stupid. This just goes to show us that we have more work to do. A part of our efforts to educate people about sickle cell should seek to ensure that people know more facts about what it is and what it isn't, and what it does and what it doesn't do. Even so, there will still be jerks out there, and they will continue to show us that Elbert Hubbard was right. Human stupidity has no limits. So let's just be sure to call them out on each stupid thing they say. That's our show for today. Please join us again next week. Same time, same station.